Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Island Forward Live. Season 2 has been going really well so far. I hope that you've enjoyed the various guests that we've brought on. And obviously, we spent some time going over Jamaica's COVID-19 response document, which we think applies to a lot of Caribbean countries. And we will get back to there. But I'm your host, David Mullings, the founder, chairman, and CEO of Blue Moho Capital. We're continuing to share knowledge with all of you who are watching, and I look forward to bringing in a guest that we're supposed to be having today. Douglas Gordon from Cannabis, Jamaica, is going to help us learn more about the topic on cannabis and the Caribbean. Let's get into that one. But as always, before we dive into the topic, I want to make sure that we're going to be knowing where you guys are watching from. I want to recognize everyone. We are streaming live on YouTube, on Facebook, thanks to Jamaicans.com. We are on LinkedIn. We're on Twitter, my personal Twitter account. And it's exciting to have so many people tuning in. So post a comment and let me know, where are you tuning in from? Which country, which city? Or if you're from the Caribbean, we're in the Caribbean, right? Give a shout out to your city that you grew up in or where you're born. I know that we love doing that. We've seen people from all over the world tuning in on a regular basis. Ricardo Posher saying, good afternoon, everyone. So thank you for tuning in, Ricardo. This for me has been fun because it's given me something else to do during the pandemic. I'm sure a lot of you have been sheltering in place as much as possible. We're trying to make sure we still have lives that are of meaning, but at the same time, it gave us a chance to pause and figure out, what do we really want to do? What are we really passionate about? And I've been wanting to do this for some time in these live chats and sharing my knowledge with people. So big up Rose. Rose is out of Orlando watching. Donna is in Atlanta. Big up ATL. Alexandria tuning in from Jamaica. Thank you for providing this time. And of course, Nicole. Hi, Nicole, one of our regular viewers tuning in from Missouri. I think this is our most regular person. Karen, again, in California. Shout out to Old Harbor, St. Catherine. So big up the Old Harbor people. I need to big up some of my family and mom side tuning in. Some of them are now up here, but based in out of Old Harbor. So special one for me. I like seeing that. But guys, keep shouting it out. I want to know where you're watching it from. Look at this. Errol is in Naples, Florida. He said last session was so great, informative. Appreciate the efforts and keep up the good work. Thank you so much, Errol. There are people who would say, no, you're wasting your time, or they don't understand why I do this. And it's been interesting to get those kinds of comments, to have even my parents sending me messages that their friends are saying, hey, I saw this in a WhatsApp chat group, or somebody in New York passed this on to me, and I had to tell them that I know David. And so it's a reminder that there are people benefiting from this, and I'm looking forward to this. I really hoping our guest comes in today. But I'm going to be sharing what I know. This is Donald from DeLand, Florida. So thanks, Donald, for tuning in. That's a bit north of Orlando. I've actually been to DeLand a few times. Thank you. Big up the Florida people. See Brandon Miller tuning in from Orlando. So we're getting some more Florida people representing for this. Not surprised. I am based in Florida, as you can see. I'm rocking my UM pin as usual. I'm actually streaming this one from Miami. I'm back in Miami. Of course, Ricardo needs to drop in the fact that he's tuning in from Jamaica. He wants to big up the Jamaica stuff. Any other Caribbean islands, please don't be afraid to shout this out. But as today's topic is going to be focused on cannabis and the Caribbean, we expect to have some guests, but this is a topic that is near and dear to my heart. And I want to start talking about why this is something that's important to me. And then taking some questions, taking some suggestions as well. Sam from Austin, Texas. What's going on? Tuning in. Respect, Sam. Thanks for the comment. This is on YouTube. On Facebook, Jennifer is saying hello from Queens, New York, that's like the second Jamaica, let's be honest. Queens, we love that. So thank you very much for the Jamaicans in the diaspora up in the Queens area. And then Carol Beckford, Blue Moho's Senior Vice President of Sports and Entertainment, who was an amazing guest, is tuning in from Kingston. So many people spoke about that episode, and guys, she dropped some gems, some great ideas. You need to go back and watch that episode. I believe that's 2 weeks ago. So let's start getting into this topic. I want to make sure that when our guests get on, I want to make sure that we won't have any issues. Well, let's get into this, and I want to see those comments. 12 years ago, I had to go and Google it and double check. I thought it was 10 years ago, but 12 years ago in 2008, I actually wrote a blog post for the Jamaica Gleaner. Right, the Jamaica Gleaner is the largest newspaper in Jamaica and one of the oldest in the Caribbean. And what they said to me was pretty straightforward. Right, they they wanted me to write something about my ideas about growing the Jamaican economy. And so one of the columns that I wrote for the blog was specifically about hemp. Right, this wasn't about marijuana, because at the time we hadn't been getting those, the legalization in the US. It wasn't that push. So I had looked at how can we, benefit from that. So here's Greg in Canada and Trevor in Canada. We got the two Jamaicans in Canada popping in. So thanks, guys. It was so interesting because I was doing research on him. And the reason I did that research was because I spoke to some Jamaicans in Canada who asked me, David, why isn't Jamaica doing hemp? And my initial reaction as someone who didn't understand the difference between hemp and marijuana, and the key thing is the THC content, right? The psychoactive component of marijuana versus hemp. And so I said, oh, because the US has their whole outlaw federal drug program, and so they're going to make it hard for Jamaica to export something like that, or even to grow it. Right? We work with the groups like the DEA, Drug Enforcement Agency, to burn these farms in the Caribbean and destroy them, despite the fact that it's mainly poorer farmers who are making a livelihood from that, and it is a naturally growing plant. But that was my reaction. And I said, no, David, we grow hemp. We grow hemp in Canada. And so I started doing the research, and it was amazing that in 2008, Canada had more than 8,000 acres of industrial hemp being grown. So somebody from LinkedIn, a Los Angeles user, smoke free. So yeah, that's someone like me. I love that. And I'm smoke free as well. But yeah, Canada in 2008 had 8,000 acres of industrial hemp that was being grown. Right? This is a plant that's fairly environmentally friendly. It is used to create a number of products that are environmentally friendly, and we weren't participating in that. Of course, I brought up the US thing again, and he's like, yeah, but we're on Canada is on the US's border, still growing this stuff. And by the way, David, you should check out who is the largest importer, the single largest importer of industrial hemp from Canada. And I was shocked when it turned out that it was the United States of America. So, guys, my guy is in here. He says he's in the waiting room, but I don't see him. So I need to make sure that I send him an invite. This is a lovely thing about technology. We are going to get an expert in here because he runs an event called Cannabis Jamaica, and it's the biggest cannabis event in the region, and he's going to be able to tell us what's been happening. So I had always focused on cannabis, on the hemp side. Now that we've seen legalization in countries like the United States, in many states, not at the federal level, but in many states, we've been seeing things happen. And obviously, Jamaica has actually implemented a program and an approach to regulating a cannabis industry, primarily focused on the marijuana side, actual marijuana with active THC. But we're going to want to have that expert come in here because I saw this as an opportunity for small farmers to continue growing things that they already knew. We have the skill set and the knowledge and the experience to grow it because we've been growing it. It has a world-renowned brand, right? It's Jamaica. You have to admit that people think of Jamaica, they think of reggae music, they're thinking of weed, they're thinking of marijuana, cannabis. So we have a brand advantage, so that is there as well. And then, of course, we need to take advantage of that. So let's see what happens. They have some rules in place. Let me do my best to bring Douglas in, and I'm going to send this to him. This is how the world. This is really interesting. So I am sending him this thing. I thought I sent him this exact one. But welcome to my world, guys. Everybody thinks that I have a ton of people working for me. We have people doing stuff, but on the show, I actually produce a show on my own. So I want to get some feedback from you guys on what you think about the business opportunities around cannabis and why Jamaica, and even why the Caribbean hasn't necessarily taken advantage of that. What do you think is the reason? Right? We have sunshine year round. Canada doesn't. A large amount of arable land, which obviously Canada does have a decent amount of land, but Jamaica has more fertile soil, I would argue. The Caribbean, that's why we grow sugar cane and mangoes and so on. Yeah, so I think that we are ideally located from a transshipment standpoint. I would think that we have certain advantages for that. But guess what? Tampa Bay is in the building. Big up Marlene. So now we're going to bring in Douglas Gordon, who is one of the foremost, I would say, knowledgeable people on this. I have Douglas backstage in our green room, is our virtual green room. So Douglas is going to come in here now, and let's ask him questions. Let's hear from him and talk about that. So Douglas, I am going to now be adding you to the stream, sir. Mr. Gordon, you hearing us clear? Yep, Douglas. Hi, Douglas.
I think my sound right. Can you hear me?
Yeah, man, we're hearing you. Are you hearing us?
Hello?
Yes.
Test,
hello?
test.
We're hearing you. Are you hearing me? All right, so Douglas, let me look at that. So here it is saying, Ken is saying, I think there's great opportunity, but for the small man, a co-op may have to be created so they can compete. So the competing is a big problem, and we have to admit we've seen this happen in other parts of agriculture where Jamaican farmers tend not to be professionalized. They're not investing in it in a business-oriented way, right? They're trying a thing. They're just doing like a small subsistence farming, and we have not done enough to upskill our farmers on the business side. And then co-ops do make sense, right? You have to talk about scalability. That's just the way it works, right? Costs need to be reduced. We have fixed costs no matter what, right? One tractor going over 5 acres, 1 acre, 10 acres, 100, right? You want to talk about economies of scale at the farming level. So this is Douglas messaging me. Perfect. He's hearing me now. So let's bring in Douglas. Double check. Douglas, you hearing me?
I am indeed. How are you?
Perfect. And I am hearing you. So thank you very much for setting this up. I really appreciate you making the time out of your busy schedule to participate in this. I get in an interesting point from Alexandra, and I want you to comment on this. I think Jamaicans need more guidance on how to go about tapping into the opportunity. This is of cannabis. I myself want to get involved, but licensing is so expensive. So before you answer that and say if you agree with that and build on it, give us a little bit of background on what is Cannabis, right? I've known you now for, this is more than 10 years, from the Real Vibes days when you had Ocean Style. You were doing amazing work showcasing the Caribbean. And then I saw you gravitate, you planted roots in Montego Bay, and then Cannabis popped up and you became one of the co-leaders of cannabis as an opportunity. What is Cannabis?
So Cannabis started out as, essentially our goal was to provide a platform where we could bring international experts here in Jamaica to help to incubate the industry. We could help to connect people who already had, they were in the industry. They weren't talking about it. They weren't dreaming about it. They weren't, desiring to see it come into fruition. They were working it day in and day out. And we wanted to bring those people together on all the different verticals that mattered. So, medicine, science, cultivation, the business of cannabis, all those different aspects of the industry. And that's what we chose to pursue and do and bring them here to Jamaica. And it just evolved over time. We've gone now to where we have, this would have been our 5th year. So we've pivoted from where we wanted to be a conduit for bringing international expertise in touch with Jamaican, sort of the nascent Jamaican industry at the time. And we pivoted to where Cannabis is now an international conference that takes place in Jamaica. So it still facilitates that exchange of information and connectivity, but rather than being focused around what's happening in Jamaica, now what's happening in Jamaica forms a part of the content for the broader conversation.
I love that, but that makes sense to have Jamaica as a focal point of cannabis and the cannabis industry. Because I mean, you can tell in Nigeria it doesn't around that, right? We have some brand recognition around cannabis. Would you agree with that? And we haven't taken advantage of it as much?
Certainly, but David, the truth is there's a lot of overemphasis on what the value of that brand is. You know what I mean? Jamaica has a tremendous opportunity in the cannabis ecosystem. But like anything else, sometimes a little bit of opportunity, a little bit of a niche, a little bit of talent, if you don't put it in the right context, it's going to act as it's going to prevent you from realizing your true potential. And so I think some of what's happened with Jamaica along the way is, there was this outsized perspective on how ready the market was to participate globally. And so some people sort of expected the global environment to come to them without understanding how far advanced the global market had really evolved. So instead of it being an asset, it was a little bit of a liability, because there was this expectation that people should be coming here and learning how Jamaicans grow cannabis and learning about these strains and when the truth is, with a proper base of global knowledge, Jamaica has an absolute advantage. But if you don't bring yourself up to that level of knowledge, you're playing only with a half deck, and that's something I think people have come around to appreciating over time.
So this is something I bring up a lot. It's a recurring theme on the show, in that I believe that in the Caribbean, we don't benchmark against global companies, global industries. We don't go out and get those case studies and then bring that knowledge back. We almost behave as if we don't need to know what they're doing abroad. We're smart enough. And you're saying that we weren't ready. But if we do have that global knowledge, we would be able to actually be very competitive with the rest of the market in the industry.
Absolutely. And I'll echo that by saying, one of the biggest deficiencies that we've seen in this industry, quote unquote, from inception, was a lack of empirical data. There was a lack of a real study that could put into context for the Jamaican and the Caribbean populations what the net benefit was expected to be from the cannabis industry. People not rush, but they made the industry legal, but I don't know that they understood why. I don't know that it was a real compelling perspective to say, from a health benefit, from an economic driver, from all these different elements, why should Jamaica legalize the cannabis industry? So it was legalized because it was the right thing to do, but it wasn't respected in terms of the benefit that it could spin off. So you're still grappling with a situation where you have laws on the books, but in true Caribbean form, the actual navigation of law on the books to practical business is still a divide. And you don't have that, the business community, for example, they don't really understand what the big impact can be for their businesses, for Jamaica's GDP, for employment, for better healthcare systems, for another source of foreign exchange, for really looking 5, 10, 15 years out at growth opportunities, what this can represent for the economy. So that's a gap that we have thankfully been able to navigate with an enterprise called New Frontier Data. And they are the leaders in economic data analysis and projections in the industry. And they have agreed to do a study with us. Well, they're doing the study, we're just facilitating it, that would speak to what the economic impacts are of the cannabis industry. And I believe that will do wonders to move us away from empty comments like, it'll bring more employment and it'll bring more jobs and it'll bring more growth, to what the real projections are, so we can see what that could look like in dollars and cents.
No, I love that. I recognize that economists tend to say, okay, well, you said that you're going to move the needle or you're going to improve something. Well, give us some numbers, give us some measurement. Where's the data? Where do you expect it to go? And then we can judge where it is going. So I love that, because I feel that the opportunity is obvious, but as you say, we need to show people hard data so they can understand how big that
Absolutely.
in Jamaica, we've had a number of Canadian companies actually invest or partner with local Jamaican firms. Some are unwinding some of those, but how is it structured in Jamaica right now from an ownership standpoint? What are the requirements from what percentage can be Jamaican owned, what percentage can be owned by an overseas person in that in the market?
So for the Jamaican market, which was very well done, they stipulated that 51% or more had to be owned by Jamaican resident, right? Which is good in the sense that initially it provided a floor in terms of the valuations for these opportunities, and number two, the intention is that the control of the enterprise would always be in the hands of a Jamaican. So that's very good from that perspective. I definitely subscribe to that.
Okay, so that's good. And I've seen some interesting approaches. Obviously, I'm on the finance and investing side where, the Jamaicans still owned 51% of the equity of the business. A Canadian company would come in, purchase 49%, but provide all the working capital to the business. So they still put in the money. They just held that 49% stake. So it's not that, if we would have come in, we would have bought 80% of the company. So if you only get 49%, you're only getting 49% of the money we would have brought to the table, correct?
Right, exactly. And that's why I say it provides a sort of built-in floor in terms of the valuation, because, you can't go below a certain point, right? Because you're going to have to earn 49%. Of course, there are lots of, you're a finance guy, so there's a lot of workarounds in terms of royalty streams and franchise fees and all the rest of it to sort of equalize it. But in principle, it allows a person to feel like this is my business, which I think is very powerful and important.
And that's very powerful. I love that. So one of the questions I want to bring up, I want to invite other people to post some questions as well. We've seen some comments coming in. One of my friends who is a member of a family office group here with me, he's a fourth generation, pretty wealthy family, and they converted one of their former warehouse for shoes in Boston, in Massachusetts, into an indoor grow facility. In Jamaica, what I've mainly been seeing, or at least here, is outdoor growth, right? You can have acres and acres of land cultivated. You can correct me if I'm wrong. Are there plans to do some of those indoor facilities in Jamaica? Do we already have them to manage that quality, or do you think Jamaica should focus on the outdoor stuff?
So two different issues in that, right? So number one is the competitive advantage around outdoor is cost driven. Jamaica has a very high cost per kilowatt rate for electricity, right? Yes, there are solar solutions, but again, that sort of skews your capex and then what your return period is for that, right? But what we miss is it's easy to rush, not easy, relatively easy to rush out and want to do an outdoor grow, okay? But outdoor grows have many, many more variables involved than an indoor grow, right? So you have the soil, you have the exposure to pests, you have the humidity, you have the sunlight, you have a lot of different elements that you have to control for. And so while Jamaica has this historical strength in cultivation, the truth is a huge difference between cultivating a relatively small plot and cultivating at scale. And cultivating at scale, according to regulatory, requirements, huge difference. So yes, you can come out with a lower cost product, but again, you have different variables that affect quality, and therefore that impacts the price. So that's looking at purely from a commodity basis, which is what it's going to go to. A lot of people don't understand that, or those who talk about the commoditization of cannabis also don't realize that, yes, it's happening, but it's not happening today. There's a lot of opportunity today and into the next 3 to 5 years before the full commoditization of it is going to hit your business, and therefore you have no more business unless you're at massive scale, right? The indoor component controls for a lot of those variables. So you can have a much better quality output, and you can charge a higher price for it once it's indoor. So I think a lot of the analysis that some of the businesses have not done to date that they should still do is what truly are those benefits. Not the sort of back of the envelope calculations, if they even indulge in that, but true working it out from a business model perspective to understand what the premium is you command by having a consistent product that's higher quality that the market will pay more for globally, right? But the big opportunity that I don't want us in the Caribbean to miss out on here, David, is the value proposition getting to finished products. If we miss out on that, we just become a net consumer again, like we have with everything else. Cannabis has this opportunity to shift that paradigm for us. We don't have to just, grow bananas and hope that somebody buys them in bulk and repackages them because they have the distribution channels. We now have an opportunity to, yes, grow in bulk, but also develop the finished products. So when we go out to market, it's not just a function of, not to make a parallel with coffee, but Japanese buy tons of Blue Mountain coffee, right? But who really captures the premium? Who captures the real premium to the consumer? It's not the Jamaican farmer. They do well, but they don't capture the real premium. And so in cannabis, I would love to see that we're producing finished products, where now the Jamaican brand is on a finished product that someone is saying from a niche perspective, it's worth a premium, and therefore I'll pay it. Infused with Jamaican grown cannabis, et cetera, but the real longer term money and the real substantive impact to our economies is not just by, I have a plot of land, let me grow some cannabis and export it for flour and oil. That's not where the real long-term opportunity lies, in my opinion.
Right. So I love that you bring it up, because we keep talking about moving up the value chain in other areas, right? We talk about that with agro-processing. Don't just grow peppers, but turn it into pepper mash and then brand it and have our own brands that are then put on shelves. Right. The example I always bring up is that Jamaica is famous for bauxite. We dig up red dirt, we refine it into alumina, and then we ship off barges of alumina and this red dirt, basically, which then gets refined somewhere else into the Coca-Cola can, and then we need to import the Coca-Cola cans, the finished cans. And what you're saying is that we can actually have the entire value chain done in the Caribbean, done in Jamaica, not just grow a plant, cut it, trim it, and then sell off the plant. We can do far more, and not just, hey, let's extract the CBD and then sell the CBD extract to Canada. You're saying we should build our own brands and sell the finished product to the world.
Absolutely. And you see, even when we talk about value chain, because the question I get a lot of times is, I'm interested in the cannabis industry, what should I do? And I say, what do you like to do? Because whatever it is you like to do, you're good at, you're passionate about, you want to learn about, there's an opportunity for in cannabis. If you're a graphic designer and you decide to specialize in cannabis, then you can become somebody who's first in market, but doing what you know. Everybody seems to think that they should become a farmer. And I say to them, when was the last time you stood in the sun at 12 o'clock in the day? Are you prepared to do that every single day? Because if that's not your passion, it's not gonna translate into you being good at it. And that's what I think we miss with the cannabis industry. Every single vertical touches something that exists. You could be an accountant. If you become an accountant who's trained in understanding the cannabis industry, you immediately set yourself apart, and then you can pursue it. One thing that we don't even look at that much that I think is also a huge competitive advantage in the Caribbean is clinical trials, and sort of research, because again, we have this very well educated population that's under utilized. And we can execute these things at high quality and relatively low cost internationally. But again, it just requires a little bit more understanding and pursuing and reading and of the industry to see where you lay.
I love that, Douglas. The minute you said that, I have to say this on air, because I know there's a whole generation that doesn't know this, but it's Cannasol. If they would Google the story about Cannasol, they talk about clinical trials. Cannasol was something that was invented in Jamaica. I mean, this was extracts from cannabis. We did the research in Jamaica, and we created Cannasol. So that is such a good point about the clinical trials. Jamaica should be a leader in that space.
And Cannasol is a finished product, as you mentioned, that I think it was in like 1970 or 70. I mean, it's very early days, like 70, 72, something like that, yeah.
Yep, and so for those who don't know, Cannasol is used to treat glaucoma, cataracts in the eyes, and this is something that was invented in Jamaica. The Caribbean has no excuse for not doing that. So of course, look at this person saying a cannabis R&D lab for innovation. That's exactly what Douglas is talking about. So Douglas, why haven't we seen more private investors in the Caribbean looking to put money into these kinds of opportunities? We read about, Dr. Lowe and other people struggling to raise money in the region to go and get into this, whether it's a nutraceutical side or the pharmaceutical side, the research, or as you said, going the entire value chain. Why do you think that has been hard, or is it that it's not hard and they're just being quiet about the investments?
So two things. One is most capital in private hands in the Caribbean has been spoiled. They usually have better information than market. They usually have access to, contracts that may be coming down the pipe. So it's not necessarily skewed as far as just presenting an opportunity. I can look at it. It's not just choosing the vertical; it's also choosing the team that's going to implement it. So for some of the typical folks who allocate capital within new opportunities, there are things here that they don't typically have to consider, right? So it's a little bit different from that perspective. So that's kind of number one. But beyond that, we have to be very real about the stigmatization of cannabis. Most people in the Caribbean who have been quote unquote properly educated or quote unquote properly raised and all these other things, it was with the understanding that that's bad. Good kids don't do that, right? So what you're now forced is not just pioneering and sort of visionary investment minds into looking with that more of a risk profile, longer term returns, etc. But you're now also trying to refine that cohort in terms of the ones who can put the stigmatization of cannabis aside, right? And then the third part, you say, yes, I'm interested, because there are quite a few people I think are genuinely interested. Now you have to look at something where you may not have the knowledge of the industry, right? And then you have to now trust in who's actually going to execute the plan in front of you. So when you start to look at all of those variables, there's a lot of things that start to take people off the table in terms of potential investors, right? What you've seen with the capital markets and even with the Canadians who've come in is they've understood early that this is not a situation where you're going to pick the right bullet and that bullet's going to pay off. This is a situation where you have to sort of appreciate that they need to play 10 bullets and 1 or 2 might pay off, but that's sufficient to win back all my money and then some on the 8th that lose. And that's really what has to happen here in terms of for the local. Oh, am I on?
Yeah, man, you're on. I was letting you get the spotlight to yourself because you were dropping some really important gems.
Sorry, I'm back. Say again?
Man. No, Douglas, you are dropping some really, really cool gems. So I gave you the screen to yourself a while ago, man. I needed people to know, wow, this you hit the nail on the head about that the stigmatization part, because I'm an uptown Jamaican and I grew up with parents who are very cautious about that. Thankfully, dad is a medical doctor, mom is a nurse, so they've taught me about the benefits of cannabis as well as any potential negative stuff. And that is the one who taught me about cannabis and brought me up to UE. He was a lecturer at UE for 37 years. How do we get to change that stigma? What can we do? Anywhere from the US, Canada, the UK, or in Jamaica, what can we do to help to change that stigma around it?
So I think first and foremost is having the empirical data that says this is what this industry can deliver. Because you see, let me give you a for example, right? A lot of times we talk about, the tax benefit of the industry, in the future, okay? That's the wrong conversation in my opinion, right? Not because we don't want to expand our tax base, we do, right? Because it's a wrong thing, because take, for example, Colorado, which has a population of, I think, 5 million, right, as well. So right. Colorado had in don't quote me on this, it's either 2015 or 2017, right? Their tax revenues from cannabis were $170 million, okay? Big chunk of change. The economic impact of cannabis to Colorado was $2.5 billion.
Billion.
Right? Because there's 14,000 people at the time employed in the industry. So that's 14,000 people earning from the industry, getting their paychecks, who can rent apartments, who can go and buy food at the corner guy, who can rent taxis, who can stay in hotels on the weekend, whether it's a staycation or what have you. And that's the nut that we need to look at. So I think first and foremost, David, until we have that information to provide in a credible format to the investing communities locally, we're starting nowhere, right? Everything else is just, hopes and dreams. When they come back and they say, I love this plan, I love this guy, or I love this lady, whatever it is, and they sit down and say, but I don't have a clue as to what size the industry is. Me citing for you that it's expected to be worth $25 billion globally in 2 years it's nonsense. It doesn't make a difference, because what is my potential of capturing 1-2.5% of that? Who knows? It's just taken straight from the sky. But if we're able to say, this is what the value can be for Jamaican economy, right? And you have investors that say, listen, I have a portfolio that spans multiple industries, and anything that can look at improving the Jamaican economy, I'm going to take on a slightly different lens, right? It makes cannabis move from a sort of esoteric, kind of cool, kind of funky, kind of stigmatized, naughty, rebellious type of consideration to a real core part of business. Because the truth is, if you can get 14,000 people contributing in jobs, contributing in that manner in the Jamaican economy, you know what? If I have a hotel here, that's more people that can come stay at my hotel. If I have a fleet of rental cars, that's more cars that I can rent out. If I sell cars, that's more people that can buy my cars. So when I look at those trade-offs, I might very well say, it's worth putting a few $100,000 into this, because it will probably benefit my other businesses like that. And that's number one. And then number two is, I think as an industry, we need to do a much better job of providing a uniform strategy as far as why the industry makes sense. Unfortunately, I think we've operated a little bit too much like, the quintessential Caribbean, problem, which is crabs in a barrel. Everybody's chasing that 5 cents. And the reality of it is, if I get 60% of the 5 cents, I still have 3 cents. How do we get this industry to be generating dollars? Then we can start to compete, more aggressively with one another. But until we get to that point, we're all arguing about nonsense. So I think from an investment perspective, it'd be great to, one, put the platform in terms of what the industry looks like. And then number two, that we're making the collective, we have a collective voice that reinforces the confidence that someone says that this is the industry for the future. Not because I feel it, but because I have the data points and the other pieces to be confident about it. I don't think we're far off those two things, to be honest.
All right, no, I'm glad to hear that. We're going to dive into a few questions and comments that are coming up here. So this first one from Catherine is asking, she thought Canada was already buying cannabis from Jamaica because there's a shortage. And I want you to just explain to people what's actually happening, because Jamaica can't export cannabis itself, but there has been something that is exported. What has been exported to Canada?
So I think to date, not just Canada, but I think to date there've been about 15 submissions for export permissions, and they've all been granted.
Right.
However, they're all relatively small, non-commercial size shipments, right? So for testing, for different purposes, right? I don't know that, and again, here's an important thing. Again, we hear people clamoring to say the lack of export regulations has stymied the industry, but the reality of it is we don't, at this juncture, have sufficient product of that can pass the requisite tests to be exported, right? So it's a little bit of empty noise, but at the same token, it's not that difficult to fix. We're not that far off.
Right.
But the CLA has been very good in terms of granting those export permits. And again, these are just the first steps into getting into that larger picture. But yeah. And so but the export regulations, I understand, are coming on stream pretty soon.
And so for those who don't know, the CLA is a Cannabis Licensing Authority in Jamaica.
Yeah, correct.
Right. So we have a LinkedIn user that's pointing out they're saying that they don't think the big value is in medicinal, but in construction and bioplastics. I guess this is coming from the idea that the cannabis plant has massive uses, not just the ones we tend to think of. So when you talk about hempcrete or rope,
Yeah.
do you agree that there are massive opportunities there as well?
Absolutely. I won't speak to those specific things from a cannabis, but certainly from an industrial hemp perspective, yes. But that being said, when I first started in 2015 and we looked at the market, people said to me that they forecast that the medical cannabis industry over time could be worth $75 billion, and the recreational market over time could be worth, $200 billion. Those numbers every year went up as people see more and more applications where it can work, right? So even pay attention to what the big picture, long-term benefits are, because there's so many different pieces to navigate between here and there that it's not worth that spending that much time on it.
No, I love that. So
to know the market opportunity is so significant that you just need to move forward, in my opinion.
All right, no, move forward. And we talk about island forward and moving forward. So I love that. And we have a question here from Kieran. I will answer my thoughts and then you give your thoughts, Douglas. He says, private investors aren't forthcoming, but do you think the government could lead the change from farm to market and then divesting it? And so my answer to that is that no, I don't think the government, especially the government of Jamaica, under any party, could actually lead this. We look at what the government has done with sugarcane and how horrible that has gone. We lost some billions of Jamaican dollars, hundreds of millions of US dollars over 20 years. That was politicized. You look at Petrojam and what has happened with that. So we're not very good at managing private business. In Jamaica and coconut, we export less of almost everything. Bananas, name it, the government was involved. We're going to have issues. And we're having that same problem right now with the coffee industry and government involvement. So I would say no, the government can't lead the change because the government is archaic. What we need is for private investors to lead that change. Douglas is here. We're going to make sure we bring him in. Douglas, I don't think the government can do this. And
hello.
Right.
Is that me? Yeah.
Yeah. So Douglas having a bit of a connectivity issue there in Jamaica. So let's see if we can hear him. Douglas, if you can hear me, let me know. I'm going to.
Yeah.
I'm hearing some sound from you. Hey, Douglas, you're back.
Yes, I am.
Right. So Kean was asking if the government could lead the change by starting it and then divesting. And I said, no, I disagree. The government has shown that they can't manage this from sugar to anything else, coffee, banana. I would say, no, I don't want the government to do it. Your opinion?
I don't even think it's whether or not they're capable of it. Fundamentally, I don't think they should. I think there's enough private capital in Jamaica that they don't need Canadian investors to get this industry going. That's the reality of it, right? But we have not proven the case out to access that capital. And until we do that, then that's something that we as an industry have to take on ourselves to change, because there's significant return opportunities and the capital exists. What I will say is I think the government could look at, whether it's a tax incentive, whether it's an investment, I think those sort of tools can be implemented to lower the risk profile of getting into the industry, because then again, it makes it more compelling for those investors, especially local and regional, to come on board.
So the government should focus on policy and regulation, a good environment, but don't actually start it. And then the business side, right? You should be making the business case as an industry. So I love that. Yeah, Nicole is asking, are there connections to those in the value stream in JA that are looking to partner with growers that she might be able to connect with each other? So
absolutely.
Right,
absolutely.
So I need to put her in touch with you, Douglas. Pretty much. I think that's what that
was.
Elaine is saying,
sure.
I cooked callaloo with marijuana for breakfast this morning. Elaine, we need to come hang out.
Good.
I've never thought about that. That's interesting. So Douglas, this person is asking, how is the marketing for cannabis? And I guess which wider public, I mean Jamaica or the global public, but you talked about that stigma around a certain subset of Jamaica cannabis. Do you think that the wider public doesn't need to change that stigma, or we do need to change at least their understanding of the business opportunity of cannabis, not just no more smoke a thing on the corner?
Oh, absolutely, fundamentally. I mean, you cannot. Let me put it this way. You know, all the stuff I've done in promoting Canex and being, you know, on different platforms and what have you, right? I've had phone calls. I remember one evening, and a lady tracked me down in that afternoon and called me, and you could hear the frailty in her voice, an older lady. And here was someone who she said to me, Mr. Gordon, I have tried everything. I've tried everything, and I'm willing to try cannabis. So I'm saying this to say that's not a matter of overcoming stigma. That's a matter of understanding that there are people who have tried every conventional medicine, and now they're saying, if it can do half the things that I'm hearing that it can do, then how do I access it? So again, from an industry perspective, we have to ask ourselves, not just how do we lead education to reduce that barrier, right? But how do we also increase convenience? You know, I've looked at it and I've said, if you've gone through this, you've been raised in this environment, somewhat conservative, et cetera, you know, it's relatively daunting to say to that person, just go into the dispensary and you can buy what you like. And I think, have the dispensaries collectively and individually, have they understood that? You know, are we sort of singing to the choir that already likes our music? You know, and I think there's a huge part of that that's taking place. You know, for a consumer or a person who's accepted cannabis, going into the dispensary is no big deal, right? For the person who says, you know what, I have anxiety, I have insomnia, I have these aches and pains, I'm willing to try. Then they stop and they say, boy, when I go through that door, what happens next? What happens next? And if I park my car up here, am I able to run in and run out in 15 minutes? Or am I subject to now being stuck here for an hour, where how many people will see my car and then want to know if I'm getting high for kicks, right? So until we figure out ways to increase the convenience and lower the hurdles for a person to try something new, right? It's going to have that impact. So these are all the things that we have to put into the proverbial, you know, pot, stir up, and then figure out the right meals to serve.
Wow, that was a really deep one. I never even thought about that one. So that's great. Instead of just focusing on those early adopters in that curve, we need to be able to get to that early majority and late majority as well. And I think that's I never thought about that. That's amazing. And we're getting this question from Ashley. How and what role would small businesses play in this, Douglas?
The same they play in any other industry. You know, Ashley, I think a mistake people make is they think that they have to approach cannabis with some different lens. It's not. It's an industry. And just like if you were, as I said, if you want to be a graphic artist, but you want to specialize in the beauty industry, it's the same exact set of thought processes that have to go in. You know, one different variable here is in any small business, your ability to ride out the challenges, as they say, the grit and your resilience, you know, those are tested. When you go into an industry that's still proving itself, that's amplified, you know, because you're not now talking about, did I do this thing right to participate in this space? You're now talking about, did I do this thing right in this space that keeps changing? You know, these regulations are still being interpreted. So it's very challenging from that perspective. But if you have the resilience, if you have the perspective, if you have the grit, the determination, and the drive, you will make it. Ultimately, you will make it.
I love that. So basically, you're saying that we need long-term patient capital in the same way that capital was used to help found some of the earliest internet companies, right? Amazon didn't generate profit for like 14 years. Those investors were there for a while, but believed in the team. We need a similar approach to cannabis and say, hey guys, we're in this for the next 5 to 7 years. Here's some runway. Go and build this. Is that what you're saying? Something along those lines?
You need runway, but you also need to understand that the solution is not just capital. I see a question just coming back, that everything comes back to accessing capital, right? The short answer to that is yes. But the caveat I put on it is people think capital means money, right? Capital means money and it needs capability. And I think that's where the industry is making some mistakes, right? Because we've been able to access money when it was flowing freely. but we didn't necessarily put in place the right expertise to help us to navigate that process. So I say to people like, I've met with small farmers who say, I've been doing this for 20 odd years and and I know I should be able to do this. And I say, absolutely, if it's what you want to do, you should be able to. But let me ask you a couple of questions. Have you ever negotiated a lease? Have you ever hired somebody? Have you fired them? Have you sat with an accountant over 4 days to try to understand what they're talking about so that you can confirm that what they say is true? If you're amenable to all of that, then absolutely pursue getting your business. If you're not amenable to that and your passion is in cultivating, then see how you can creatively find ways to cultivate and either be your own small business consultant or be a supervisor with some piece of equity. There are different creative avenues, but too often the knee-jerk reaction is, I want to be an entrepreneur, I want to be my own boss. That's absolutely fine as long as you understand everything that comes along with it.
Wow. Thank you so much, Douglas, for saying that. Because obviously we run Blue Moho Capital. We invest in public and private companies. And we have so many people coming to us with, hey, I started this business, or I want to start this business. Can you invest? And the first thing we ask them is, okay, great. What does your team look like? And what does the experience look like? And what I was taught is that you have to have product market fit, but you also need to have founder market fit, right? Who on your team has experience in that industry? Who on the team has experience with business, as I said, negotiating contracts? I feel like too many people have seen entrepreneurship as now fashionable, and then they look for some industry that everybody's talking about, and then they jump into there and say, yeah, man, I'm going to start my own business, and I'm now the CEO of the company. Great. Are you willing to do the things that a CEO does? Do you even know what a CEO does? Do you have a chief operating officer? Who is your partner? So I think you're dropping gems for people and saying money alone is not enough, right? That's financial capital. You need knowledge capital as well. And you have to be willing to partner with people who know these things as well. And I see Marley is saying, how much capital does it take to win? So I don't know, Douglas, I don't even know what numbers you might have. What do you think if somebody was to start up their own cannabis business in Jamaica and try to go the full value chain like what you are saying? What would you tell them is the minimum they should be aiming to raise within 24 months?
The truth is, David, and this is going to help no one, it depends. It depends what you're trying to accomplish. If you want to go from cultivation to extracting oil, okay, again, it depends on the size of it, but if you're looking for a relatively modest size operation, you could be looking at 2.5, 3 million US, right? Yeah, you could be. Again, what type of extraction do you want to do? Are you going to be GMP or EU GMP certified? Are you going to do, what kind of lights are you going to put? There's a lot of different variables in terms of like what that overall capital outlay needs to be.
No, I love that. So it depends on what their goals are, what they want to accomplish. So I've seen a bunch of people now saying, at least now 3 people saying, man, I need to get in touch with you or get in touch with someone in the space, Douglas. So how do people get in touch with you so that they can get more information about this? You can always point them to, they need a guide.
Sure. I mean, my email is pretty simple, Douglas, Douglas, at cannexjamaica.com.
All right, hold on. I'm going to put it up on the screen. You said it's Douglas at cannexjamaica.com. You just broke up.
Douglas at cannexjamaica.com. Let me type it in here for you.
It's here, Douglas at cannexjamaica.com.
Oh, there you go. You got it. Yep, perfect.
Yeah. I'm multitasking. I got this done really quick. I didn't want to just put it up before you said, hey, email me, guys, right? We're cautious about just giving away people's email addresses.
I respect that. Yeah,
man. But guys, trust me, Douglas is somebody I've known for years. He's a serious businessman. You hear him talking about the business side of this thing. You want to get access to data. You want to know what's happening in the region, how to get involved in the Caribbean and this space. You need to be talking to this guy. There's nobody that I think is going to be as open to clearing opportunities with you and helping you get in there. I've seen Elaine saying that they might not make anything in the first 12 months. She's saying that, typically the first year of a business is more that groundwork, planting that seed. And I call it stump. And that's
David, if there's one other thing I could add, right, that I think it's coming at the tail end, but this is really what has to drive your taking on this industry. You have to be authentic. You have to be real. You have to understand that if you're jumping into this because you think you're gonna get rich and make a ton of money, listen, I learned so much about this industry by being in it. And as much as this sounds woohoo, and prior to being in it, I would have probably dismissed this as sounding woohoo. I'll say this: the plant understands authenticity and real. And if you understand how the medicine of this industry can help people, if you understand that we can move from a situation where we have within this industry the ability to move for where we talk about free healthcare, and I use that deliberately because what is free healthcare today? You go wait at a hospital and you have to go spend 2 days, go back for 2 more. It's not free, right? It's a productivity cost. It's a psychological burden. We have the opportunity with this to make people healthier, right? Because they have to go to the hospital less often. Therefore, you have productivity increases in your workforce. You have psychological benefits because they don't have that burden anymore. You get rid of anxiety. You can treat insomnia. You can treat a lot of chronic pain issues. So there's so many benefits before you even get into the economic strengths that come from the industry. But the plant will not allow you to thrive if you do not respect it. If you do not understand that its primary benefit is helping people, and as a byproduct of that, it will make people who do it well abundant and prosperous and all the rest of it. But the two things don't go back to front. And I know that might sound woohoo to be on your particular platform, but it's what I actually believe.
I love that you say that because I believe in that whole triple bottom line investing that Richard Branson talks about, right? We want to talk about people, planet, and profit. It's important that you do good and do well. So I like that you brought that up. That this is about helping people, and I love that you said you learned so much by being inside the industry. There's a quote that I want to give you. This is from Toyota. It's a famous proverb from Toyota that I got during our MBA program on a Toyota case study. And it says, to make a better product, get off your rear end and experience the marketplace. And that's what you say. By working in it, you get to understand how this stuff works. So, all right. So Jason Scott is asking a question about the current cannabis legislature. And could the government sell back confiscated cannabis to legitimate companies for processing, or is that something that can be explored? So you know this world better than me. Is that something you think they can do, or is there going to be a quality control problem because of the seed to sale?
So from a quality perspective, you can control for all of that in the extraction process. You can take out any sort of impurities and so forth. You might have to go run it through 2, 3, 4 times, depending. But that's not the issue. That's really not the issue. The fact is, people are investing real money, real human capital, right? Real expertise. And so they should have the right to sell their product. They should be able to monetize that product. If you have now confiscated product coming into that ecosystem, you're taking away from the person who has gone through the process the right way from being able to realize a similar sale. Right, so you have to bear that in mind. The second thing is, when it comes to money laundering, global issues, right? This is something that Jamaica needs to stay on the not right up on the line. It needs to stay away from the line, okay? Because the truth is, whether we want to say it or not, there's a lot of capital. There's a lot of, when you look at the balance of payments in Jamaica, you can tell very cleanly that it's supported by black market trade, right? For years. The discrepancy is massive, and yet the foreign currency reserves don't move a whole hell of a lot, right? So that's a function of that. So Jamaica has to stay far from the line as far as people thinking they're taking illicit product and now trying to convert it into legitimate commerce. So to my mind, I think they're doing the right thing in sort of just saying, look, that's off limits. If we confiscate it, we're gonna destroy it. They're doing the right thing by doing that. It may be painful for some. Some may think it's not right, but the reality is there is a pathway to doing it the right way. And if we all pursue that pathway, but tweak how we do it, then we'll all benefit accordingly.
No, well, Douglas, we've hit that 1 hour mark, and that's the show. I have to admit, I learned a good amount today, and I had already been doing so. Thank you so much for giving this 60 minutes to us. Thank you for coming on. So many people are saying that this is great knowledge, and I really we're going to have you back again. I know that we're going to get more people saying, "Hey, I got more questions. You need to bring Douglas back." So thank you so much for what you're doing. Please stay safe. I know you. I assume you're in Montego Bay right now.
I am indeed.
Yeah, well, I am jealous. So hopefully I'll come see you. I expect to be there in late November. I will only come and see you
Okay.
after I've gotten my test and make sure I'm negative.
Sure. Sure.
I like to come and spend some time and dip my toes in the sand and in the water. So thank you once again. Love what you're doing. Everybody, let me put up Douglas's contact information again. It is Douglas at cannexjamaica.com. Check him out and make sure, when time permits and we can have the physical conference again. You don't want to miss it, right, Douglas? It would have been the 5th year, he said, this year.
Yeah, it would have been the 5th year. But we've also, been doing investment summits in different markets. We've been out to Barbados, London, Toronto. We've been pushing it. But David, I want to thank you for this platform. I think it's really important to have I've listened into a number of your different sessions, and I think it's really great just sort of showcasing things that are happening and putting issues on the table, and hopefully, collectively the right solutions come forward to take us all forward. So I appreciate what you're doing as well.
Looking forward to this, and we will talk. Maybe Blue Mohawk Capital can help participate in what you're talking about. So thank you so much, Douglas, and stay safe.
Thanks, David. Take good care. Have a good day.
Bye. So, guys, that was Douglas Gordon from Cannex Jamaica. Again, somebody within my network who I think is doing amazing work in the Caribbean. This is an industry that we simply do not talk about enough. Douglas dropped major gems. It really helped us to think about not just the growing part, but that entire value chain, the issues that we face at this time, and how we need to think about it. And of course, he pointed out that the capital is there. What we need is to make sure that you come correct with your plan, your business plan, your team, and let's think about that. So this is great, and I really want to close on the fact that Douglas specifically talked about this is about helping people, not just about getting rich, right? This is in most cases natural. This is something that is helping a lot of people who have not been able to solve health issues using traditional medicine as well. So let's not think about get rich quick. Let's think about helping people in a way that also generates a profit. So people, planet, and profit, that's triple bottom line investing. And that's what Richard Branson talks about. And that's something that we support at Blue Mohawk Capital. So until next week, thank you very much, guys. We will have another guest for next week. I will not reveal the topic just yet, but we're getting into that space now of discussing things that you might not normally hear, and you might be surprised to hear that an investment firm is even learning about those industries. Thank you very much. Share it widely. I always appreciate that you give me 60 minutes of your time any day of the week. I do not take it for granted. Stay safe, everybody. One love. Later. Signing out.